Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 258. My name is NBZ and I'm alone, Bally. I've been left alone. Everyone's left me. They've all gone to India to have fun in the sun. Not that I would want to be there because the sun is way too hot in India and it's just like, I'm not built for it.
We're having a very mild October over here, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's pretty mild. I mean, it's still pretty warm. It's just been perpetually hot. Like September was like extremely hot and I'm like, what the fuck is going on at September? I mean,
but it's hot without the hay fever. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. So that is a bonus, but it still gets very muggy. But anyway, as a pale Indian, I'm often mistaken for someone who isn't. So I think people, like for my sister especially, people are like, are you Spanish? Are you this? Are you that? It's like, no, I'm Indian. I don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes. But yeah, I'm not one for the sun usually. I am one for the winter and the cold. I was born in the cold, I was born in December. So it's kind of my vibe. So yeah. How about you?
You've internalized it.
I have internalized it, yeah. Are you a cold or are you a hot vibe?
I probably side more with cold than hot, but I still feel the cold and do like a bit of warmth occasionally. And I handle the heat surprisingly well compared to, say, someone like Caroline, where I can be out in the heat, and as long as I've got like a hat and sun cream and maybe some sunglasses or whatever, I can tolerate it. And I'm fairly good at actually running in the heat as well. As long as it's not humid, like dry, really sunny, hot days, I'm actually okay at running in, which I'm very proud of. For a Scot,
that's good. That's good. I would never be caught running in the sun. It's just a terrible idea.
But would you be caught running?
No, just never. Never be caught running ever. Yeah, it's not my vibe. But in any case, we're here to not run anywhere. We're here to run into your minds with our video game descriptions. I don't know. We're here to talk about video games on Nintendo platforms. That is what we do. It's our job here. We do it well. And Bally will tell you what we're going to be talking about today.
We have been playing so many video games that
too many.
We're only going to be talking about video games that we have been playing. There's not going to be emails. There's not going to be any second segment.
Yep.
We're just going to be talking this show about the video games that we have been playing. Yeah, because there's been some great ones. Like MBZ, for example, how often is it where I'm in the middle of a bit of Elden Ring, Tears of the Kingdom, going to talk about Wargroove 2 in a second. I've just got all these long games on the go, trying to desperately manage my time before the end of the year. Yeah. And then MBZ's like, oh yeah, by the way, I played like my game of the year. And you've got to play it.
You have to play it.
And I'm like, well, this game that you're talking about is 4 hours long. It's on Game Pass. You've just declared it your game of the year. And now I'm basically obligated to put everything to the side and I have to play.
Yeah, it's very rare because like I'll recommend stuff to you all the time, and like it's a rare game that like immediatally you have to drop everything to play. But that was the situation, and we'll get to that. We will get to that game, Cocoon.
For sure.
We'll get to that.
Cocoon.
But Bally, some serendipity arrived at our doorstep, whereby you are a big fan of Advance Wars and Wargroove, the kind of spiritual successor to Advance Wars. We managed to hook you up with a review code for Wargroove 2. Thanks to our friends Honest PR, to Matt Lorigan, who was able to get us a code for the show, and for Bally to play it early in advance in order to talk about it on this here show. So the game just came out last week, but Bally, you've had a bit more time with it to play. What are you thinking? I know this is one of your game of the year at one point, the original Wargroove.
This was my game of the year, I want to say 2018.
Maybe it was 19, because 2018 was Celeste, I think. So yeah, maybe 19
was Celeste. You're right, it was 2019. Yeah, so yeah, Wargroove 2. Most people are saying this, but it's bigger and better and badder than the previous game. Like there are now 3 campaigns. I think there's 3 campaigns, and I think they lead to like a 4th campaign, or it might just be a 4th final mission. I don't really know. And there's also like a prologue campaign. So I've done the prologue campaign, I've done the first campaign, and I think I'm nearing the end of the second campaign.
Wow.
And that's only actually taken me close to 10, 12 hours maybe. I don't know how much I've played, to be honest. And I'm really, really loving it so far. And what's awesome is I've actually just finished Advance Wars 2 as part of Reboot Camp. So I'm in like a really good headspace. I was a bit nervous when this code came in the sense like I've just played I've played like 35, 40 hours of Advance Wars this year. Do I have the capacity to play this game. And then jumping into Wargroove 2, I've remembered, oh yeah, this game is like a lot better in so many ways than Advance Wars, while still, and it doesn't just copy Advance Wars, it really reinvents key aspects that just make the gameplay so great. And I should say that Wargroove 2 really doesn't alter much from Wargroove 1. There's like 3 new units, but the meat and potatoes of the other units and the way they interact is exactly the same. Like all the animations are also the same, all these things, they're all the same. And also reminded me, like, again, I much prefer dragons over bombers, or massive turtles over battleships, or knights on horseback instead of tanks, or giant walking golems instead of mecha tanks. Like there's just a real fun fantasy design to this world, which I am so engaged with compared to Advance Wars. And that's one thing that I love about the Wargroove universe, is the story is actually really good. And the story in Wargroove 2 is even better, I would argue, than the story in Wargroove 1, where...
Does it continue on in any way?
It does continue on, but in a kind of weird, mystical kind of, you don't fully understand what's going on kind of way.
Right.
Because the first campaign you do is with the Fari, and they are mice. They're kind of... It's funny because, like, back in the Warhammer Fantasy days, the Skaven, they were like the rat people,
right? Yeah.
Whereas these Fari, they're definitely mice, not rats, and it's funny because the great thing about Wargroove is that all the units between factions are the same, but they have really unique designs. So, for example, the Cherry Stone are kind of like your European traditional knights of the Round Table kind of style.
Right. That's the red lady, right?
That's the red lady. That's Caesar the dog is another part of that.
Yeah.
And basically, their knights on horseback are just people on horses, whereas the Fari, they are mice, but instead of horses, they ride cats, which is just like this really silly, like nice,
that's amazing.
Nice thing. So yeah, you've got your factions again. You've got like the forest people, so they're like all foresty and made of leaves. You've got the Redead army led by Volder, and he's all about like necromancy, and he leads them in Felheim. It's all kind of like Norse mythology driven, and then you've got like they're kind of the Heaven Song, and they're all kind of like, they're kind of East Asian themed, but also heaven related, and they all kind of have like mechanical golem beings that they use, and these are all from the first game, and I just love the factions and the design, because their golems look different to Cherry Stone that just have literally walking castles and things like it's really nicely themed in that way.
Sounds like they just had to put a lot of art resources behind this game to create that feel, because if you're going to have every unit be unique for each army, and however many armies there are, like that's a lot of pixel art to produce.
Yeah, I mean there are 5 factions minimum in this game, might be 6, I think it's 5, and yeah, so there's a unique looking unit for every single type of unit, and there's maybe, I don't know, 20 types of units. Like there's a lot of effort that's just gone into this game. I'm just trying to remember the 3 unique the new units. So yeah, you've got the flying infantry unit. So these are infantry so for the for Heaven Song, or Heaven, who I'm playing as at the moment, they ride on like these ostrich kind of things. Those units can fly, and the advantage of them is because they're infantry on like horseback, as it were. They can capture like towns, capture like houses and things. And then you've also got frogs in this game, which is really strange but really awesome, because the advantage of frogs is they can pool units. That's a space. So
it's a bit of like Into the Breach going on.
Totally. So you can do it on friendly units or an enemy units, and there's quite a lot of like, similar to Into the Breach, pushing enemies off the edge in this game. There's some power-ups that do it and other things. Can
that cause instant deaths if you like push someone in the water, that type of deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can push them into the abyss, and yeah, it's some really cool stuff in here. And like, I just think that it all just feels more varied. I think one thing it really has over Advance Wars, and I really noticed this with Advance Wars 2 as part of Reboot Camp, is Wargroove 2 really changes up what you're aiming to do in missions and the way that battles unfold. Advance Wars is very, very rigid in you need to take out the HQ or defeat the other enemy units, and that's how you win the game. Oh, and now we're doing a Fog of War. And basically it's only Fog of War or defeat all the units, and that's it. Those are the only two game modes it feels like. And even in Advance Wars 2, they just ramp it up and they say, well, now you still have to defeat the enemy units, but instead we're going to use these pipes. So I don't know if you know the pipes in Advance Wars 2 MBZ.
I don't think so, no.
The pipes are impassable. So the maps constantly create choke points and funnel points that force your unit. So it's a real slog where you're like, God, I'm getting absolutely back because my unit's being forced into this bottleneck. And so many of the missions at the end of Advance Wars 2 are just like designed around that, to the point where the goal is often to break a point in the pipe that is so hard to reach. And there's a couple of maps near the end of that game where the pipe just like almost spirals a bit in the corner, and you have to get a unit right into there and then destroy the pipe, and then you win the game. So like my point is, Wargroove, and especially Wargroove 2, because I think Wargroove 1 was the diversity of styles of what you're doing was maybe a little more slim, whereas this game it feels like there's a lot more going on. I think that combined with quite a fun story and kind of there's a lot of intrigue and it's clear that the three campaigns are going to link up in some way, and there's like shady shit going on behind the scenes, and it's all going to come together in a cool way. Like I'm really enjoying the story, and that combined with the mission variety has meant that 12 hours in, I'm not feeling burned on turn-based strategy at all. Like it's still really fun to play, really chill, and yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. It's really impressive.
That's really good. And does it work in the same way as the first game, where you have this kind of overworld and you're choosing missions and there's side missions to go and do that type of thing? And does that kind of distribute over 3 different campaigns in that way?
Yeah, so I'm only done campaigns so far. I know this game has like multiplayer, online multiplayer, and it's even got like a roguelike mode that I've not touched.
Oh, really?
Yet. It's got like some sort of roguelike mode, which I will try at some point.
Probably has the map creation stuff from the first game as well, I assume.
Map creation, definitely. Yeah. The campaigns so far are much more linear than the first game, which
okay.
I'm not opposed to because I kind of like linearity. I don't like... Yeah. Advance Wars 2 kind of does this thing where it throws 7 missions out at you, and then you have to beat like 4 or 5 of the missions to progress, so you can essentially leave the 2 hardest ones if you want to.
Oh, okay.
I think Wargroove 1 did that a little bit, where you kind of had branching paths.
Well, I remember the little bit I played of Wargroove 1, I could choose to go and do a side mission if I wanted, but I could also just continue with the main mission, so it seemed like there was extra content kind of like on the path. But it feels like this game, because they're doing 3 separate campaigns, they're doing less of the side stuff and more just making you do everything just in a linear fashion.
Yeah, which I think is working nicely, because like I said, they're mixing it up. It's progressing a story. It's fairly lean. Like that first campaign, I think was maybe like, I don't know, 5-6 hours, or maybe 5 hours. It wasn't that long. And then the prologue campaign was obviously just like, I don't know, a couple of hours. Wasn't too long.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's really, really enjoyable so far. And I'm like I said, I'm really shocked that I've come off of Advance Wars 2, because I still had a really great time with Advance Wars 2. I actually went back and checked out, like, when did I actually play Advance Wars 2 on the Wii? When was that?
When in the podcast did we do it?
It was episode 99.
Oh, wow.
It came out on the 9th of September, 2017. And I was talking about on the show that I'd had Advance Wars 2 downloaded for a long time on my Wii U and hadn't got to it.
Okay.
Back then, that was just when we started our Discord server, actually.
Okay.
Way back in 2017.
Yeah.
If you're interested, that episode, MZ, you had just played Sonic Mania.
Interesting.
Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, and Mario plus Rabbids.
Wow.
And yeah, the focus I emphasized back then was that you're mainly managing multiple armies against one. Like that's the theme. It feels more so in Advance Wars 2, which is cool. And like I said, that it focuses a lot more lasers across the map, cannons, and you don't have the lasers or cannons, just the enemy. Like don't think that you're having any advantage here. And then like I said, impassable pipes that are just there to like funnel you into specific parts of the map.
Yeah, I remember you just saying how much harder it was, how much more brutal it was.
It's really brutal.
And I think at the time you kind of preferred it for that. And I remember in that top 50 around that era, you pushing for it higher than, or pushing for it like I was pushing for like Fire Emblem Fates Conquest. I think like we're both kind of doing that of like we wanted to be punished, right? And that was the kind of argument, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And I still have so much respect for Advance Wars 2, but I did feel really bruised by the end. And back in 2017, I said something I would like them to fix in the future Advance Wars was having a purple area that shows the safe spaces. So if you remember, they introduced this, I think, in Fire Emblem Awakening might be in the first game to have
I think that might be it.
Where you just press the X button and all the enemy units get highlighted, and all the areas that the enemy units can attack get highlighted as one mass danger area, essentially.
Yes.
So you're like, if I move my unit to this clear space, no matter what happens, I cannot be attacked. And yeah, Reboot Camp doesn't have that. It sucks. Like, I wish it's like little...
They had like all the chances in the world to like quality of life this thing, right? Like improve it and like add to it. And it feels like all they did was just skin it and just make it the exact same game.
Exactly. And I was interested listening to what I had to say about the final mission in 2017, because that mission is damn hard. And I admitted back then that I had to use save states for the final mission.
Right.
So
no option here today to do that.
Well, exactly. So with 2 turns to go on, like, because there's like a countdown on the final mission, I did a save state as a precaution back in 2017, and then a turn later he got his like meteor power and blasted my units just at the point I needed them to like complete the mission and beat the game. So I went back to the save state and then beat the game back in 2017. This time around on that final mission, I've got to put my hands up. I fluked it. I actually fluked it. So it's like I described before. It's one of these ones where you got 3 factions against 1, and there's a specific part of it's not a pipe. It's a big laser beam that shoots down the middle of the map, and you have to defeat the laser beam. And the laser beam doesn't actually take a ton of hits. Like, you just need to get a bomber there, and you'll defeat it in like 2 turns, I think. But anyway, I basically got a bomber there. It managed to fly all the way up the east side of the map, and there was something about the computer that just felt the AI that felt a bit weird, where it was spawning counters to my bomber constantly 1 beat late. Now this may be because the bomber can fly very far, so like by the time something spawned, I've already flown outside the distance it can attack me. But the computer just kept missing my bomber, and I managed to fly the bomber to the laser, destroy the laser, beat the game. And I must have reset that map like 4, 5, 6 times, and just this one time I got a bomber very early on, managed to get up the map and defeat it. So I can't believe I did it. It was wild. I've got
it sounds like one of the hardest kind of like things in this series.
That level pushed me a bit over the edge, where I was like, Advance Wars 2 is it's
just a bit too much,
it's
right?
just a bit too much. I'm glad I beat it, but like, ugh. So yeah, just some other conversations we had back in 2017 about the game. You asked me, are there any black holes in this game? And I said, just the amount of time that I sank into it, which I think was a cracking joke. Wargroove was on its way in 2017.
Oh, right.
We knew about it. I guess it didn't arrive until 2019. And I said it was exciting, but I was pleading for another Advance Wars game. And then you said, as soon as intelligent systems can get waifus into Advance Wars, it will come to Switch.
Yeah, wow.
So it managed to even come to Switch without waifus, which is incredible. And yeah, that's kind of all I had to say about Advance Wars 2 back then. But like, yeah,
I mean, it sounds at this point that like you are, and you've said it before, that you probably prefer Wargroove to Advance Wars, but would you say it's kind of like in stone now that this is your preference?
I think that when I've talked about Wargroove being higher than Advance Wars on our like top 50, it's predominantly been thematic and kind of story driven, and I like that. Well, I like the characters, and And now playing Wargroove 2, I'm a lot more into the mechanics than I was versus Advance Wars. Now, like I said, those last few missions of Advance Wars 2 are really, really goddamn brutal and just not fun in the same way. And I'm just having a lot more now. Maybe Wargroove 2 gets incredibly brutal. And
Sure.
But the advantage of Wargroove 2 is there's loads of difficulty sliders and loads of things I can do to edit it. There's nothing I could have done. Maybe I could have turned it down from classic to modern on Reboot.
Right,
but
yes,
definitely not on the original. But I'm just finding that the variety of what they're asking you to do is much more fun. And I'm really engaged in the story and the characters. And obviously I still love the theming.
Also, it's pixel art, which Nintendo just doesn't do anymore.
And
right?
it's pixel art. It's fantastic pixel art and incredible animations. Like, I really, really, really love the animations of Wargroove 2. Like, it's so nice.
Yeah, sometimes that's all you need. Like, we'll talk about my time with Horizon on the next show. I've gone back to Horizon Forbidden West to try and finish that up. But, like, honestly, half of what I like about that game is just like it's just very nice to look at, you know. Sometimes I'll find myself in cutscenes like not really paying attention to what people are saying and just looking at the pores on their skin instead, because that's what's more interesting to me about the game than the actual dialogue. Which sometimes like just a good looking game is a good looking game, and it kind of does something for you. So,
and as much as Wargroove 2 is a good looking game, aspects of it still don't run the best. I've had one
that's a shame,
soft reset I needed to do, and obviously I was playing the game before day one patch, which has now come, and also just kind of you have to have your cursor in the right space when you're fast forwarding the enemy through their movement if you want to speed them up. If you have it on their HQ and you press B, it'll just bring up their HQ, whereas if you have it on a empty space and press B, it'll fast forward things. So there's a little bit of jank in there, not much, and the animations still run beautifully. The music is fantastic. Like it's a really, really lovely, like, put together game, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And having played Advance Wars 2, it's kind of criminal how little story they actually put in Advance Wars when you think about it. Like, they could have done so much more.
But that wasn't the era for it though, right? You think about GBA games and handheld games, especially back then, were like, well, let's just make this a portable type experience, which meant like short burst kind of gameplay stuff, like easy to pick up and put down. And I feel like story just didn't mesh that well. And also, story wasn't really a big priority for anyone back then, let alone Nintendo, who like are barely at the story altar even in 2023 with their big games. Yeah,
totally. So. And that has always been a common criticism of Advance Wars. So if you're making a game that's trying to evolve on that formula like Wargroove, I guess there's an open goal waiting there to get a good story in there, and I think they've done a decent job of that so far. Like it's good. I'm firmly in the I prefer Wargroove to Advance Wars camp right now, and having played them so close together, it's nice to see there are cool things about Advance Wars. I like the way that you put units on cities to recharge them. Recharging units in Wargroove is slightly tougher, but it just makes it a bit more strategic. I think the bottlenecks are far fewer in Wargroove as a result, and having played the ending of Advance Wars 2, which is basically bottlenecks the game, it feels quite refreshing. Now, I'm sure there'll be bottlenecks and difficult things at the end of Advance Wars 2, but I do feel more equipped and more prepared, and it's nice. I'm really actually impressed by the enemy computers as well in Wargroove 2. They know how to utilize a small number of units incredibly well, where I can sometimes have far more units than the enemy, and they still manage to just utilize the space, utilize this, and they do heavy damage to me. And that's partly because, obviously, one reason I said this massively of Wargroove 1 is the critical hit system is impeccable with Wargroove. Like, it's a huge part of the game, and for those who don't know, it's every single unit has the ability to crit another unit based on placement on the map. So every single unit has a unique critical space they can be in to enable it. For example, if you are an infantry unit and you're standing next to a commander, you will do a critical hit. Critical hits, I believe, are 1.5 damage, and it's guaranteed. It's not like rolling a dice like a Fire Emblem critical hit, for example.
You mean next to your own commander, right?
Next to your own commander. Right. But likewise, there's some other unit, I can't remember which one, but they will critical hit when they're next to the opposition commander. So or your dragons, which are like your bombers, they critical hit when they attack enemy units that are on roads. So it's like, oh, they're really exposed, so they're going to take a ton of fire and they're going to take 1.5 damage. Or your pikemen, they will do critical hits when they're standing next to another pikeman. So like it's thematically like they all make sense, and really utilizing those critical hits and finding the right moments, you can really outmuscle more units than you own when you play it right. And that's something that obviously Advance Wars just doesn't have. There's not like, there is some dice rolls, but it's a very minute level, and it's mainly just, oh, my unit's better than yours, I win, I was in the mountain, you can't get me. And there's obviously still that with Wargroove, but the critical hit adds this other level that is just so much more engaging and intriguing to like try and break down and play. So yeah, Wargroove 2, like it's come out at a pretty horrendous time for video games.
I was going to say, like, are you worried for like the future of this series, given that there's not been a lot of talk around it, a lot of buzz, and it's a very, very tricky time for anything to get any attention right now? Are you worried that people won't pick it up, or do you think that in the long term fans will kind of come around to it?
I do think turn-based strategy is incredibly niche, unless you're AAA Fire Emblem or something. Like it's still a very niche kind of type of game. So I totally get it, and I think that even if this game had come out at a clearer time and made more waves, you know, I think the audience comes to Wargroove 2. Like comes to Wargroove. There are rabid Advance Wars fans that will come to this game regardless of what else is out at the same time. Like I don't think Wargroove 2 is the sort of game that would seriously be impacted by a busy release schedule, because I think that your casual gamer fan, like, I don't know, Kind of Funny, or someone, and they're not casual, they're obviously hardcore, play a ton of games, but they play a lot of mainstream games, and it has to be an indie that really stands out.
It's a big focus on like AAA, basically.
Big focus on AAAs. They only play a handful of indies. The type of gamer that only plays a handful of indies is not going to play Wargroove unless they have some knowledge or reference to a game like Fire Emblem or Advance Wars. Like I think that they might try it regardless, and I think the first game especially, and this game, the prologue, is very good at like easing you into it. But it's still quite a hardcore niche audience from my experience, and I would be surprised.
And they'll likely just seek that out, you know. If not now, then eventually they'll wait for it to go on sale and pick it up, right?
Yeah, totally. And so I'm not too worried about the timing of it coming out, and I think it's a fair criticism that some people might have that, oh yeah, it's not doing a ton new compared to the first game, but like I said, I've not tried the roguelike element. Like that could be exciting, and I do like the split campaign and the idea of these campaigns coming together. I think that's really exciting. So story wise, I'm there, and like I said, I think the missions so far feel more varied than the first game, which is like I was saying about Advance Wars 2, like really valuable, because a lot of those late missions in Advance Wars 2 were incredibly similar, and it was quite a grind by the end. And it felt really fresh to just jump into Wargroove 2 and play something that was very different.
No, it's good you're able to kind of directly compare them like this, having had such a kind of recent experience with Advance Wars.
Yeah.
And
I still want a successor to Advance Wars. I still think it's doing unique things that are very different to Wargroove, that I would still embrace a new game, but likewise I just prefer that Wargroove formula a bit more, and I want more turn-based strategy games. Let's do it.
They are the thing that we love on this show, in different ways, right? So that's good. I'm very, very glad, and I'm glad that as a hardcore fan of both these series, you're able to take an early look at Wargroove 2 for everybody out there. So
in the year of Bali, these two games, they've delivered. It is doing well so far.
It is the year of Bali indeed. All right, so let's talk about the video game that we really want to talk about the most on the show. I back in the day, right, I played Inside, and I loved Inside. I thought Inside was an incredible game. I played Limbo as well. I didn't like Limbo as much as Inside. I think Limbo is very good. I thought it had some puzzles, like especially the last one I remember in Limbo struggling with and having to look up a guide and stuff for that, and it got a little bit frustrating. But I thought Limbo was very cool, and I thought Inside was like a perfected version of that, right? And the reason why Inside worked so well for me is that it was a side-scrolling cinematic platformer in the puzzle vein where every solution felt like brilliant, but also you never got frustrated getting there. And I was always able to get over it. I was able to understand it. And I remember I played it in a single evening. It's like 3 hours long, and I finished that game, and all the stunning revelations, all the kind of like the gameplay twist at the very end, which was just kind of mind-boggling back then. I've held it in very high regard for a very long time. And so since Inside came out, a lot has happened to Playdead as a company, right? Playdead are currently working on a game. No one really knows what it is. I believe they have a deal with Epic for their next game. But some people left Playdead, so some core people who were the head of the studio. So there's Dino Patti, who went off and he founded Jumpship, which is another studio. And Jumpship put out Somerville last year. Somerville, a game that is very much more aesthetically in the vibe of Inside and Limbo, where it was a kind of side-scrolling cinematic platformer with lots of puzzle stuff. I was interested in Somerville. It was on Game Pass as well. I never played Somerville because everyone said it was kind of middling, right? It got like 6s and 7s. It didn't score very well. And it sounded more frustrating than anything else, right? Where, you know, they have this aesthetic style that is evoking Limbo and Inside, but the seamlessness of the design just wasn't there. It just didn't have that same kind of brilliance to it. And so I was like, oh, that's a bit of a shame. Seems like the talent isn't really there. And then, you know, on the other side of this, you have Jeppe Carlsen, who leaves and creates this other studio. I think it's called Geometric. I can't remember the name of his studio, but Geometric something. So he creates this other studio, and he starts working on a game called Cocoon. And Cocoon shows up, I think, at maybe a Nintendo Direct, maybe another show. And I remember looking at it and thinking, that looks kind of neat, but it doesn't have the same kind of Inside Limbo aesthetic as Somerville did. So I guess it wasn't quite as much on my radar. But I was still interested because I was like, okay, well, but I guess I was maybe a little less interested because after what happened with Somerville, I'm like, do these guys have it anymore, right? Where's the real kind of talent behind the studio? Maybe Playdead are going to come back and really show us that the people who were really talented weren't the people at the top all along, and it was some other people at Playdead who really were the minds behind the throne. That couldn't be more wrong, Bally, because we found the reason why Inside and Limbo were brilliant, and it is Jeppe Carlsen, the person who is kind of leading Cocoon.
6 years.
6.5 years, yeah. But I think Cocoon is one of the most brilliant games I've ever played. It is stunning from a design perspective, and I think we think about this with games sometimes where they come out and it feels like, oh, you could have trimmed that. Like, you could cut the fat. Like, games are too long. They're bloated. There's extra stuff.
There was this part I didn't like.
There's this part that wasn't good. They kind of, you know, this bit went on a bit too long. Blah, blah, blah. There's always stuff. And I think a lot of people have spoken over the years of, like, video games need an editor, right? Like, films have editors, like TV shows, like, in a way to cut things down, in a way to make it get rid of the fat. And the problem with video games is they're always coming in so hot, and there's never time basically to make something that has that. Cocoon really feels like, you know, this is a 4-hour game. It took me 4 hours to finish. I think you took a bit longer. So it ranges 4 to 6 hours basically.
And I did it in like 3 play sessions.
Yeah, exactly. So this is not a long game, but it took 6.5 years. And you can feel every single one of those 6.5 years because the amount of restraint this game has when it comes to what it teaches you, what it shows you, what it takes you through, and not having any fat at all, having just the most seamless experience, the design language of this game, the way that it teaches you without saying anything, with no pop-ups, no prompts, nothing, and you instantly understand exactly what you have to do. It is remarkable. And I think that idea of editing, of like cutting it down to its core essentials, like it feels like Cocoon is one of the most well-edited games I've ever played. And I don't know if that was the case. I don't know if it was bigger and they cut it down and they refined it to this fine sheen. But it feels like the sharpest design I have seen in a game in years. Like, it is absolutely astonishing. And even after the first 2 hours, I went to Twitter and I was like, already this is one of the best puzzle games I've played. And I hadn't even got to the crazy stuff that it does at the end, but already I was so enamored with everything it puts across. So I guess that's an intro to Cocoon. We should probably explain what Cocoon is and what's going on. So, Bally, I guess, do you want to kind of talk about the approach to Cocoon and kind of what it is?
Yeah. If I had to do it in a sentence, I would say it is top-down Zelda puzzles without the enemies. But if I wanted to say more, it's that, but the main crux of the form of puzzles are these orbs. And you can go into the orbs, and each orb is its own world. And you are manipulating, going inside and out inside and outside of these orbs and moving them about and bringing one orb into the other, essentially bringing a whole world into the other, solving puzzles that then will affect the orb on the outside and so forth, to the point where you're manipulating orbs, bringing them inside and outside of each other and progressing puzzles that way in truly bizarre ways. And that loop is made stronger by everything that you've described, MEZ, where every single orb has such a unique vibe and feel. You start with like the orange orb, and it is like this dusty desert. We should say you're playing as like this almost bug-like cicada, whatever you call them.
Yeah, like you're basically like... Right, the idea of a cocoon, right, is, you know, the small little caterpie goes into a cocoon and becomes a butterfree eventually, right? It's that idea, but you are kind of like... You're kind of in this in-between state where you kind of have wings and your wings are small. You're not really fully evolved yet. You've not fully become a butterfly. So you kind of come out, I guess, pre-formed, because you kind of exit from this cocoon at the very beginning of the game. I mean, like, Cocoon's a great name for the game because it is about going inside of things and outside of things, right? It's about encasing yourself within a space and the externality of that as well. So, like, I think thematically it fits very well. But yeah, you're a small bug-like creature, and I think part of the brilliance of this design of, like, it teaches you without you having to read a single thing, is you will step up to an object and you notice, and I only noticed this like quite a bit into the game, that your wings will start flapping or fluttering or buzzing nearby interactable things. So you automatically, like, instinctually know that this is the thing you can interact with without having to, you know, just say it or put it out loud.
And there's only one interact button. This game is incredibly
single button game.
Simple. Simple's the wrong word. It's like incredibly lean. Like just having that one button, so streamlined. Like if I had to sum up this game in one word, I would say like immaculate. Like it's just so perfect in so many ways. And just talking about style, I love that it's not purely bugs. It's like cyberpunk bugs. It's like there's this real cyberkinetic, metallic, futuristic kind of cyber, I don't know what other words to use, melded with the geometry and the almost like the style of bugs, cocoons, lattices, hives, all these bug-like things you can think of. Like the whole worlds are designed around these ideas. Like it looks unbelievably good and works so well for what the game is doing. Because my guess would be, is it Jeppe
Carlson? Yeah.
My guess is he came up with the globes straight away. Like that's the crux of the game. That's the going in and out of the globes. Thematically, what works best with that? Oh, well, we could be a bug, and we could be a bug that goes into the globe, and then they pick up the thing, and then they're almost like so many bugs, like ants and things. They carry around food.
Yes, they're like
to get
dung
from point A
balls,
to
right?
B.
That are much larger than
Exactly.
them. Yes.
So like, I think the theme will have definitely come after the mechanics, and it's just the perfect theme for like what this game's going for.
It does like feel Nintendo-like in its design in that way, right? Like where they clearly had this idea.
It feels so good. Like this game is making me want 2D Zelda to remove enemies from the game. That's how good this game is. It's like keep a game, and we should say this game has bosses, but it doesn't have enemies.
No.
And I was thinking, how many games have I played that have bosses but don't have enemies? And the only other game I could think of was the Pathless. And I think what those games both have in common and do so well is that the main thing with the Pathless is exploration, and the main thing with Cocoon is puzzles. So removing enemies from the game allows Cocoon to focus on puzzles and the Pathless to focus on exploration. And then the bosses are almost like the cherry on top. They're the set pieces that almost divide the game into chapters and kind of they give you a focal point to get to and move beyond, but they aren't the game itself. They're just kind of like these bonus cool things. It's the game showing off, really, whereas the real part of the game obviously is the puzzles. And this game wants me to try more games that have bosses but not enemies. There needs to be like a name for that type of game because it just feels so into what I want to be trying to play.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the reason those bosses work as well as they do is because this game is so smooth to control. Like, it's one of those things, right? We talk about sometimes of like, why does Night in the Woods have platforming? It doesn't need it, but it just feels better as a game for having it. It feels better to move around that world with a nice feeling jump and to go on those wires and to hop around the rooftops. Like it enhances what is already an incredible game in Night in the Woods by having that layer. And like Cocoon fundamentally is a puzzle game. It doesn't need you to be fast or reactive or whatever, but it lets you have such a sense of movement and freedom. And you know how fucking much I complain about movement in video games and how slow everyone moves and how I need a run button. As soon as I started moving this character around, I'm like, this is the perfect speed. Like it feels like they spend.
It's not too fast and it's not too slow. It's kind of like this medium, I would describe it. Or maybe on the faster side, but it works.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was like, 6 years spent on whatever the movement speed was, they nailed it. Like exactly the movement speed I want. And you walk around that first opening area, and one of the things that really overwhelmed me in this game, like you have to play this game with headphones because the sound design is astonishing. It is just like the mood it sets and just the amount of things happening, like the wings, like when bosses have their entrances, and just like the ethereal kind of soundscape is just, it really takes you to the place, right? There's a sense of immersion that it creates that is unlike anything else, and I think it has that alien vibe to it that really kind of transports you, that I think is just excellent. But I will say, I think we should make this clear to people, because this is a Nintendo podcast and there's a very Switch focused audience here.
Yeah,
I would not recommend playing this game on Switch. I've seen a lot of people talk about it on Switch and it is available there. If it's your only way to play it, I guess you should play it on there, but if you can play it anywhere else, I would strongly recommend that, because so much of this experience is how smooth and seamless it feels, and having it at a higher frame rate is almost necessary to get that across, right? Like playing it at 30 frames per second feel like you're doing a disservice to what Cocoon is trying to convey as a game. And a lot of people who have played this game, I've seen comments of like, I don't usually care about frame rate, but Cocoon you have to play on something that isn't Switch, because it's just not going to give you that same sense, that same atmosphere, because it will feel sluggish in a way that the game is not designed to be. So it is available on Switch, but I would strongly recommend you playing it somewhere else instead, if you can.
The quality of the animation and how snappy, especially the transition between worlds when you're going in and out of those globes, those spheres that you're carrying around, that are essentially the crux of the game. Like it's so crucial. So I played this game on Series X and it ran seamlessly. And I know you play on PC.
Oh my god, dude, this game at 144 frames is insane. It is like, and honestly, that's like a good part of the reason why it just resonated with me so strongly, is just like, wow, just the smoothness of it was just so overwhelming.
And there's some really impressive flourishes of animation, especially around like the set piece. There's a lot of set pieces and transitioning between parts of the world. Like you'll often go onto a platform that then links to another part of the world, and you'll fly through this bit and all these bugs will just come flying across the screen, or the way that certain bosses are animated in these really elaborate fancy ways just to make you go, wow, that looks unbelievable. And you just remember, oh yeah, I'm playing a top-down 2D game, and there's like just this incredible presentation. Like it's wild.
Yeah, and I mean, on the bosses, right, one of the things I find really smart about them is that, I mean, the checkpointing in this game is very good anyway, but like when you start a boss fight, it will teach you a mechanic in a safe space before the boss fight starts, and if you die on that boss fight, you'll just go straight back to the beginning of the actual fight. You won't have to do that mechanic thing again. So it teaches you in a safe space what you're going to do in this boss fight, and then it starts the boss fight, and it means that you feel like you're on an even footing to start it. You already understand the mechanic that it's going to tell you. Like, it's just a really simple thing, but it's just a brilliant piece of design in order to kind of make it work for people.
They teach you a mechanic to use in that boss fight, and mechanic is not used in any other part of the game.
Yes, exactly.
There's a unique mechanic for every single boss fight, and that is just impeccable. Like we've been saying, like cutting it down, understanding what the player wants. How do you keep the experience fresh? How do you keep it lean? How do you keep it interesting? And this game, especially like those focal points around the bosses, it just really doesn't fail.
If I was to levy one critique of the game, it would be around the boss fights. Yeah, there is a chink in this armor, and there's only one. It is a bit of a pet peeve of mine with boss fights. This game does the Wario Land 2 and Wario Land 3 thing, where if you get hit it basically it's a one hit. It's not really a death. It basically just kicks you out. So you get hit by the boss, it will knock you out the orb, and you'll have to go back into it basically to fight it again.
And you're back to the first phase.
You're back to the first phase, and I love the design of these bosses and the phases and all that sort of stuff. The one issue with it is the same chink in the armor that Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze has, which is you can only damage these bosses within certain windows that the game allows you to damage them, right? Like you have to wait for an opening in order to do it, and that opening only happens after you dodge a bunch of stuff, wait for animations to happen, blah, blah, blah. So as a player, you have less agency in taking the boss down, which basically means that if you get knocked out a couple of times, you're like, all right, I have to go through the first phase, which is easy again, and wait another few minutes in order to get back to where I was.
You prefer Mega Man, I'm in there, I'm going to absolutely nail this boss, I defeated it in 10 seconds, move on, let's go.
I like the Souls-like model where you can just kill the boss before it even goes into a second phase, right? Like there is a flexibility from the player to express themselves, to do what they want, to take down the health bar if they're aggressive or whatever.
I think a game like this and Jeppe Carlsen will want you to see that phase. He will want you to like experience this final phase of this boss, and like he wouldn't want you to skip a beat and you know not see that phase fully.
Totally, yes. And it's designed in that way where the third section of each fight will change things up
quite radically often. That last phase. Another game that I just referenced that does the booting out thing is the Pathless, and it's almost like a decision, and Wario Land has the same thing. They don't have health bars. It's like a way of, we accept that because we're a game without enemies, but we have bosses, we won't have health bars, but we still need some way of punishing you for failing against the boss. And it's that balance of, I personally love it for Cocoon. I love that you're booted out, you go back to phase one. Some bosses were definitely harder than others, and it's just kind of teaching you, right, let's learn this boss and let's master it. And the Pathless basically does that as well. And again, the Pathless, there's like specific windows you can do damage to the boss, and you wait for the phase, which I know you've just said you don't like.
Where I think the Pathless actually has one over on Cocoon is that I believe in the Pathless there are checkpoints within the boss fight. So you get to a point and you are kicked out, but you restart back at that phase of the boss, right? So I'd say my only thing to improve Cocoon would really be just add checkpoints after each phase, essentially, so that you don't have to worry about repeating that stuff.
I'd say the boss fights are too short to do that. Like the Pathless definitely has longer boss fights.
Maybe, but maybe like the third phase would be it, right? You get to the third phase and that's when you're able to do it. I don't know. It again, I'm sure that they thought about this a lot because this is one of the most impeccably designed games of all time. So they must have done. But it's the only thing. It's really the only blemish that I can find with this game, because otherwise it is just a trip. Just going through these puzzles, and like there are such small things that are like teaching you, but like things that you don't expect, right? So the one that I always come back to is, so when you go into a world, you place it on this pedestal, and this pedestal creates like a puddle, this kind of colored puddle that speaks to the color of the world, and it is a reflection of what's inside the world. So you see a bit of a reflection of what's inside. There are these drones that you collect, and these drones are used to open up passageways, and you know they enter into these big blocks and they open up doors and stuff like that. And these drones, you can transport them around the level, but they have one hindrance, which are these kind of laser triangle kind of wires, where if you pass through this wire with the drone, it will eat the drone up and you'll have to respawn and get the drone back. There is a puzzle in this game where in order to get past a wire, you have to exit the world with the drone, let the wire go back past, and then enter again so that it passes you. And so my thought was, okay, I'll just exit the world, I'll wait for a little while, it'll probably be done, and I'll go back in. And what happens is you exit the world, and on that mirror, in that reflective surface, you see the wire cross through the water. And that's what I was just like, fucking hell, this is brilliant. Like, of course that's the solution to the puzzle, and that's what they knew. Yeah. But and
again, it's the only time it appears, just that one puzzle. You don't repeat it, that's that one time.
Yep, and like, there are similar ideas to that of like having worlds inside worlds to accomplish other things and like create solutions, but this one thing that happens and you just see, it's just fucking brilliant. It's just so like seamless. It's like, yes, they thought of literally everything, including the reflection in the surface inside this world to let you know when the time has passed so that you can jump back in safely. Just remarkable stuff. Absolutely phenomenal.
I want to jump in on something I loved which is because it's a top-down puzzle game, there's often areas where it feels like you have so many options as to places you can go. Like, do I go north, east, south, west? And you realize, oh, south is closed, west is closed, so I have to go north or east. And you might start going north, and then like a door will shut behind you, or your platform will move, and then going from where you just came has been closed off. And the game does this really subtly, constantly. And it really reminded me of, I was saying this over WhatsApp, and he said like Metroid Dread, where that game is very, Metroid Dread is actually very linear, but it feels a lot more open. Cocoon is the same. It feels very, very open. Sorry, it feels very linear. Sorry, I'm getting this wrong. It feels very open, but it's actually very linear because there's constantly options. You feel like you constantly have loads of options when the reality is I don't think at any point in the game you have more than 2 or 3 options. And there's really not much backtracking as a result. Yes, there are some areas that are slightly larger than others, and if you want to have a proper explore, but again, with the speed of the movement of the character, you're not backtracking that far. Like, you'll never like, oh god, this puzzle is across 20 screens and I'm now spending 20 minutes walking from A to B to A to B. There is a little bit of back and forth because you're moving spheres constantly, but it's never that far, and it constantly feels like you're solving where to go next when really the game is subtly guiding you there without you even noticing.
Yeah, you have to place your trust in the game that will take you where you need to go, and it always will do that, basically. It will always place you where you need to be at what time and with the right orb kind of combination that you should have at that time. And I think there's a version of this game that gets too complicated, right? There's a version of this game that
100%.
There's 7 orbs and you're juggling them all and you forget which one you're in and which one you're not in. And like the restraint that they have to say, no, we're going to limit this to this many, and then we're going to do this other thing with it to kind of simplify it again, and then we're going to slowly reintroduce, like, it. The pacing of it is just stunning from that complexity angle, where I saw him tweet about this on Twitter as well, saying there's a subtle thing that we also do after you've done a complicated puzzle. We suddenly make it very linear and easy and chill to give the player that sense of relief, that like lessening the burden of having to think too much. Because once you've done a really complicated puzzle, you do want to kind of like reset yourself a bit, and the game just instantly knows that that's what you want as a player. And I mean, just the testing on this must have been insane. Just trying to figure out like the feel, the pace of it. And, you know, we've said this back and forth a few times, but it is so rare to find a game like this where puzzle games can often be obtuse. They can often get you frustrated. They can often force you to go to the internet and look up a walkthrough just to get through a part of the game. I know this happens to you quite a lot, right, with these games. And to achieve a level of design where you get to that point where you're almost there and you're like, I think, am I going to do this way? Is this correct? And then you just get it at the moment where you otherwise would want to be frustrated and or like give up. Every time it happened, every time it worked for me, where I was like, I'm not sure if I can do this on my own. And then it came to me in a flash. I was like, oh, this is how it works. And I didn't look up anything, and I never had to go to a guide. And I know the same was for you, Bally, which I think for both of us is pretty remarkable because we have very different puzzle tolerances, right?
I can't remember the last puzzle game I beat without going to a guide. I think even on the easiest puzzle game I can think of, and I can't even think what it would be, I still had to go to a guide. This game is definitely not the easiest puzzle game I've ever played, but it's still the only puzzle game I've ever played where I didn't have to go to a guide once. And like, there's such an achievement with the design where, especially in the latter half of the game, I was so convinced I had either soft locked to the game or I was at a dead end and just could not work out what to do.
Yeah, there's one moment that is just like mind bending. You're like, is that supposed to happen? You know,
yes,
it's one of those.
But it happened. It just kept happening. It kept happening. There's like the quality of the design is so impeccable that you constantly feel like you have soft locked the game, and then a minute later you are onto the next puzzle because you just solved it. Like, that happened so many times, and I used to be incredibly stubborn when I started with like puzzlers of like, I am not going to a guide. I'm going to work this out. And I spent 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I never spent more than like a few minutes on any of these puzzles.
Yep.
And I can feel the frustration building. And just as it turns from, oh, this is interesting, and I'd like to solve this puzzle now, to I'm really frustrated, I have no idea what I'm doing. It just revealed itself to this is how you do the puzzle every single time before I got frustrated. I never got frustrated with a single puzzle in this game. And for I think it's like 4.5 hours. For a 4.5 hour game, that is unbelievable. I cannot believe it consistently did that without me getting frustrated once. I cannot believe it.
Yeah, it's just an achievement of design, unlike many things I've ever seen in the medium. And and it is not getting a lot of discussion right now, which I think is a real shame. I think, like, obviously this is a year filled with big games, and like, I was very much struggling with Game of the Year this year. Like, I've liked a lot of stuff a lot. Like, there have been games that have really had standout things, right? Like, Tears of the Kingdom, I think, is still incredible. It's still very high up my personal list, but like, it didn't have the same impact as Breath of the Wild, and just, that sat with me in a way that I just didn't feel good calling it my Game of the Year. Like, Pikmin 4 I really adored and had a great time with, but it is like, it's an iteration on a thing that I've seen before. I think, like, because this year has had a lot of sequels and a lot of stuff that is known quantities, they're very big games that are known quantities, nothing has, like, surprised me. And the thing with Cocoon, and this is what always defines Game of the Year for me, is a game that comes out of nowhere that surprises you, that like takes you off your feet and does something new and unique and different. And that's exactly what Cocoon is for me. It's why it is just so head and shoulders above anything else I played this year. It is just different, and it's providing a different experience, and is building on a genre that has, been around for years and years, but it feels like the peak of that genre operating at like the highest caliber possible. And it could have gone a bit more complicated, could have been a bit more like that. And I think it would have been lesser for doing so. I think the restraint that it shows in stopping where it does, in exploring the ideas that it does to the extent it does, is its real genius. And yeah, I'm stunned by it. And I mean, if you haven't played it, obviously it's on Switch. You can check it out if you don't have anywhere else to play it. But it's also on Game Pass, so it's available if you have a subscription, or just buy it. Just support this game, because honestly, I want it to succeed. I want more people to play it. I think it needs to be discussed more. It's amazing. It's just an amazing game. So
it's so good. I will say, yes, the animations are impeccable and awesome. I still think there's so much to gain from this game. If you are forced to play it on Switch, I think you will still have an incredible time.
I agree.
It just might not be always the smoothest experience.
No,
it's still just, at its bones, mechanically an impeccable game, and all the rest is just like this incredible bonus that is just like, oh, I cannot believe this level of production has gone, and the like detail has gone into a top-down puzzler that is very much 2D Zelda without enemies. Like, this is just fantastic.
Yeah. So Cocoon comes with our strongest recommendation. Do check it out. Please check it out. And yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking about it at the end of the year in some fashion. So look forward to that. But Bally, I have also spent a lot of time with another really good game this year. That just continues to be the case. And like, this episode is basically like 3 banger indies plus Advance Wars 2.
I've not got to this one yet. Yeah, plus Advance Wars 2.
Yeah. So yes, I know you're very interested in playing this as well. Also, like, this is a bally-ass fucking game if ever there was one as well. So, Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars obviously came out a little while ago, probably over a month ago now. Came out on everything, on Switch, on PlayStation, Xbox, PC. And it is a RPG in the style of Chrono Trigger, right? It is a kind of classic turn-based RPG. And it was interesting for me going to Sea of Stars because I had played Chained Echoes at the end of last year, start of this year, and Chained Echoes was such a revelation. Like, Chained Echoes is, again, one of the best indies of recent years, and I think is just an amazing game. And I was a little worried that had spoiled me, because so much of what Chained Echoes does is it modernizes JRPGs, right? It's like, okay, we're going to take out the grinding, we're going to take out the entire, like, mana recovery, health recovery after battle system. We're going to just make everything smooth and seamless and all that sort of stuff. And I was worried, because Sea of Stars, I played the demo for it, and I liked the demo, but I wasn't as impressed with it, and the combat seemed interesting, but wasn't as engaging to me. And so I was worried because, Sea of Stars does have a thing where you have to heal after battles and stuff like that. And it does have, a bit more classic vibe to it. And I would almost compare it in this way, where Chained Echoes is what if they evolved Final Fantasy VI. Sea of Stars is what if they evolved Chrono Trigger. And I think both these games do things very well, but in different ways, where, like, narratively, Chained Echoes is much better. It has a much more interesting concept and setup and story, a wider set of characters, a more ensemble cast like Final Fantasy VI, without a real protagonist in a way, and just deals with deeper, darker themes, basically. Whereas Sea of Stars is far more like, it's a fun adventure with some characters that are very light in terms of their characterization. I would say that's its weakest aspect, right? I got to the end of this game and the two main characters, Zale and Valir, I still don't really know who they are as people. They just feel like ciphers, they don't feel like characters. And the one character that does feel like a character is their friend Garl, who kind of joins them on their adventure. So Sea of Stars is a kind of a three-party RPG where you have three characters. And Zale and Valir, they're called the Solstice Warriors, basically. So once every however long, like in the summer and the winter, a great eagle will bring a baby to this island, and it could be blessed by the solstice, basically. So there are not many Solstice Warriors left, and there's this whole thing where the Solstice Warriors have to fight these dwellers, who are these kind of evil beings. And so what happens in the story is actually kind of kicks you off in media res. It's the two of you on a mission, and you're just running around this overworld, and you're fighting things immediately, and it feels like it just gets into the meat of it very quickly with the battle system. Then what it does is it does Bally's favorite thing, where it does a flashback, and they're kids again at the academy, and it has a slow narrative focused tutorial where it teaches you everything about the game in a slow way. This is where I felt like the intro was a bit rough, because it threw you right into the action. Then it's like, no, we're going to take that away. Now you're going to have to walk slowly through these narrative bits.
A lot of JRPGs like to do that, actually.
Yeah.
I think a couple of chapters in Octopath Traveler 2 do that.
Yes.
Here's all the things, take it away. And famously, Final Fantasy VI does it at the start.
It does, yes, exactly. And I actually kind of like that. I think Chained Echoes also does it, where there's the big battle and you're in your mech straight away, and you're going and you're fighting stuff, and then they take it all the way. It's the Metroid vein. It's the what they call it, abilities, right? It's the abilities to give you the cool stuff, and then they take it away from you. A patented Metroid thing that always happens. But yeah, this game does a likewise thing, and I think you'll like it because of that, because it does the whole like, now we're going to slowly teach you everything with tutorials. And yeah, I think that the pacing was a little bit off for me, so I was a little bit put off by that. But after that, you get into the meat of it, and you start running around, and this game is fucking stunning. It is just beautiful pixel art, real high quality stuff. That's another area where it kind of stands apart from Chained Echoes, where Chained Echoes like looks good, but it's more of a traditional pixel art style. Sea of Stars it's more isometric, right? It's almost Cocoon-esque in a way, but with pixels, in that it's an angled position, and there's a lot more environmental kind of traversal. There's a lot of Golden Sun DNA in this game, where like you have abilities. One of the first abilities you get is a wind push, and you'll be able to push blocks on the overworld and do environmental puzzles. So there's a bit of Zelda injected in here, where you're going through dungeons, and it's not just fighting enemies, it is solving puzzles to get places, it is climbing on objects, and like traversal stuff is very much just push the button to do it, but there's a real tangibility satisfaction to doing that, for climbing ledges, for moving on ropes, for there's one point you get a grapple hook, and oh my god, it's one of the best feeling grapple hooks in a 2D game I've ever seen. Like it has a real spark to it, a real punch that just like pings you across places and has great momentum. And yeah, it just feels like they give you these tools to make the environment a place that is fun to explore and fun to discover and fun to find stuff, which I think is great and is kind of the core of what makes this game good, is that combined with obviously the kind of combat in the overworld. So you'll enter a space, and you'll go through it, and you'll fight enemies at a kind of prescribed limit, where they won't be random battles. You're not running into any random battles. They're all on the overworld, just like in Chrono Trigger. And as soon as you run into one, it will hop into position just like Chrono Trigger does, right? And so you have these abilities like different kind of solstice powers. So Valir has a moon ability, and Zale has a sun ability, and enemies have these locks on them. So an enemy might have a blunt lock, a sword lock, and a sun. So what that means is it will count down. So you'll maybe have 2 turns to get rid of these 3 locks. So what you want to do is you want to hit the blunt attack with Valir, because she uses a kind of not a spear, but a like a pole. What do I call that? Like a it's like what Keelik has in Soul
Yeah.
Calibur. Fucking staff? A staff is a good way to call it. Yes, yeah. So she has a staff, so she always does blunt damage. Zale has a sword, so he always does like sharp damage, essentially. So you'd hit him once with Valir to get the blunt damage, and then you'd hit him with Zale to do the sword, but you also have to get rid of the sun. So Zale has a move that basically allows him to do a special move that lets him do sun damage and sword damage at the same time. So you could do that and use sub special, or you could use the system that they build into the game called, I can't remember the name of it, but basically, if you do a basic attack on an enemy, and by the way, all this combat is Mario RPG inspired, where, like Paper Mario, where you have to time button presses to do extra damage. So if you time the button press, you'll do 2 hits as opposed to 1 hit.
Do you find it's all telegraphed well? I've heard a little bit of criticism suggesting that it's very tricky to learn the timing on that.
Yes. It definitely is. It's similar to the Mario RPG games where it's never perfect, right? It's never exactly what you expect, where oftentimes I found myself pressing the button before the animation exactly hits, because if you hit it exactly when it hits, it doesn't actually do it. I think that's a bit of a problem with this genre, this type of RPG, is that I wish it was a bit more kind of tight with those windows, right? The windows are tight, but they're tight in the wrong way, where it doesn't feel like that's the point that you should press it, and I had to rely a lot on audio cues in order to get the timing correct. Like, the animation is helpful, but it's more the audio that actually signals you in to when you should press the button. So actually playing this with, volume on the game as opposed to kind of usual grinding in JRPGs meant I didn't get to play as many kind of podcasts while I was playing this. I did for a bit, but like once I understood enemies. And the other thing is that enemies have, so this thing with the lock system, right? To get rid of the lock system, if you don't get rid of locks on an enemy, they'll use a special move, which does way more damage. So it's in your interest to get rid of those locks. Whereas a basic enemy move will be a different animation. And there are quite a lot of enemies in this game. It took me 27 hours to finish the whole thing, so it was a pretty long affair. But yeah, there's a lot of enemies throughout that 27 hours. Like, they keep it fresh for the whole game. There's so many different areas you go through, and there's constantly throwing new different enemies at you. And so you're always learning the timing of brand new enemies every time you get to a new area. So that knowledge feels like you get it for a small amount of time, and then you have to reset that knowledge base again because you're presented with brand new enemies. So the timing stuff always takes a bit of trial and error, and you will likely take a lot more damage when you start an area than when you finish it, because by the time you finish an area, you'll be familiar enough with the timing to where you're usually blocking and taking less damage from enemies for the most part, basically. So, but yeah, I guess the combat itself has a lot of elements to it in that way where so the thing that I was going to say is that when you do a regular attack on an enemy, you create these kind of orbs on the ground, and you can inhale those orbs for one of your characters, and it will buff the amount of damage they do. So if you do 3 regular attacks, the other thing regular attacks do is they give you mana back. And this game is very low in its numbers, where like your health starts at like, I don't know, 40, and your mana starts at like 7, and to do one special attack is like 3 or 4 mana, so you can only do a couple of special attacks before you're out of mana, but you get mana back by doing regular attacks. So you use your specials at the start of a fight. The game encourages you to do this. They're like, you never have your mana bar full at the end of a fight. You should always, at the start of a fight, you'll have it full. Use your mana, you'll get it back by doing regular attacks. So that's kind of the flow of the game, where you are resetting your mana by doing regular attacks, and then you're doing your special moves to like break enemy weaknesses and do more damage, basically. So there's a real kind of flow to it in that way. I will say that the combat is one of those things that doesn't evolve enough throughout the game. I'd say the complexity always comes from the perspective of new enemies with new movesets that you have to learn. Your characters only get a couple of abilities to begin with, and they only get a couple more throughout the whole game, which means that lots of fights can tend to feel the same in terms of your strategy. I relied heavily on one of Valir's moves called the Moonerang, where it's like the Ganon fight in all the Zelda games, tennis. It's basically tennis, where she throws a moon out, and it hits the enemy, and it comes back to you, and you have to time the button press to do it. And you will eventually get very good at this, where you are doing it, just bing, 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 and you're just ding, 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 and just you're doing hundreds of damage because you're very good at like doing that reaction time, essentially. So I got very good at doing that, and so there were fights where I'd just be like, well, I'm just going to use Valir's move, and it's just going to kill everybody, basically. So that definitely can mess things up a little bit in terms of the pacing of it, but But yeah, I enjoyed the feeling of getting it right and nailing the timing is good once you have the timing. So it takes a little bit to get into it.
It sounds like the game could maybe benefit from more characters and like more variety in movesets.
And there are more characters. Like, it's not just your 3 starting characters.
Okay.
The story evolves and you get more. I would say the characters come a little late into the game, though. You get a 4th character at maybe the 10-hour mark, and then you get a 5th character at like the 15-hour mark, and then you get a last character at like the 23-hour mark.
How many are in your party?
3 total at one time.
Okay.
So you always have 3. And here's another brilliant thing that the Chained Echoes also does. You can swap out party members mid-fight with no penalty. 0 penalty. So if one of your characters is low on health, just switch them out, and you can act with that new character on the same turn. Like, it's really good. It's really streamlined in that way.
So you're a wider party, not within your 3.
Yeah, so if you have like 5 party members, you can just swap out one of your party members. And this has to happen because sometimes you'll be in boss fights where it's like, okay, I need moon and sun, but then I also need poison and I need this other kind of effect that I have from another party member. So I'm constantly swapping party members in and out in order to achieve those ends. So yeah, it definitely is beneficial to keep swapping people in and out, and also just balancing the mana.
You need to get to the end of Octopath Traveler too.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Yes, yeah, I'm sure it does a similar thing, right? But yeah, this game feels like it just keeps things fresh, mainly through the new spaces that you find. Like, there's a point in this game, I think, from like hour 2 to hour 10 where I was really in love with it, because it was just like, here's a new area, you can spend one evening, do an hour and a half, you'll play through this whole new area with different enemies, different vibe, different music. There'll be a really incredibly pixel animated boss. These bosses are really amazing from a animation standpoint, from a pixel standpoint. They're just like some of the best I've seen in the medium. And you know, I guess Wargroove as well. Like, seems like a good time for incredible pixel art games to come to the fore, and Sea of Stars is no different in that sense. But it felt like the reason it took me a while to finish this game is that I felt like I played an hour and a half, but I was kind of exhausted at the end, because you do so much. There's so much density within that hour and a half of play session that you always feel like, okay, I need to take a break from this, and I'll come back tomorrow and play more of it, basically. Otherwise, I feel like I'll kind of burn myself out on it. So yeah, and I think that was really good. Then hour 10 to hour 20 is where I felt less good about the game, because it feels like it just keeps doing that same thing, right? You're still going to new areas, still doing that stuff, but it feels like there isn't enough change, isn't enough hook to keep you going, because the story is just, the characters aren't that interesting, and the story is still not getting to an interesting place, that you are kind of just dragged along a little bit. So I'd say the middle of it is a bit, I guess, kind of what you're talking about with Jedi Survivor, right? Where it just feels like the middle is a little baggy in terms of how much stuff you have to do to get to the interesting places. And then you get to the back half of the game, and suddenly there's a cool twist that happens, and then you get to a place and you're like, oh my gosh, this game still has like 7 more hours for me to play, which I wasn't super sure about, because I'm like, I kind of want this to finish. But then those 7 hours are super interesting and like have different locations, and everything is changed in a weird, unique way. So like the back half actually ended up being a lot stronger, and then the story starts to come into its own in the back half as well, and is a lot more interesting. And yeah, it just feels like starts a little slow, gets really strong for the first chunk, falls off a lot in the middle, and then ends really strongly. So it's basically, can you get through that middle chunk okay? And I think, honestly, with your taste in games and things you like, I feel like the music, the atmosphere, the combat, the rhythm of the combat, the areas will kind of carry you through that. So I do think, Bally, you'll probably come out the other side liking this game more than me overall. But I still really like Sea of Stars. I think it's definitely going to be a game to consider for my top 10 this year. There's so much to like about it. There's so many like craft things that it does well. Part of my love for this game is also being a fan of The Messenger. This game is connected to it story-wise, because they take place in the same universe, like hundreds, thousands of years apart. It is a prequel, right? So it's like before the events of The Messenger, which, to be honest, I don't remember anything about The Messenger story-wise. It's a Metroidvania kind of side-scroller, so as with most of those games, I just A-button through the dialogue, because like, who gives a fuck in those games about story? So I really don't know anything about the story in that game. But the thing that did stick with me from The Messenger is the music. And let me tell you, I have never been so struck with musical callbacks in a game. Maybe Xenoblade's the only other exception of musical callbacks getting me, but I was a huge fan of the soundtrack for The Messenger. I remember the end of that year, we did a music episode where we walked through our favorite tracks of the year.
Yeah.
I remember showing you some of those Messenger soundtracks, and you were like really into them. I don't think you've got round to that game yet, have you, The Messenger?
I haven't. I might have to play it after this game.
Yeah, totally. And you'll maybe get the reverse of that with the music, because there are places you get to near the end of the game where a song kicks in. I'm like, wait a second, I recognize that. And yeah, it happens a few times where it's like bangers from The Messenger, like some of the best tracks from that game pop up in Sea of Stars and in new remixed form, and it's so cool. It's just a really cool thing. There's a really great YouTube video that I shared in the Discord that is basically showing you a level from The Messenger and the same level from Sea of Stars. One of them's a side-scrolling level, one of them's an isometric, RPG, but you follow the level design, and they basically like one-to-one recreate the level design in the Sea of Stars level as they did in The Messenger, with the music from that area in The Messenger playing. It's so cool. It's really cool stuff. So they definitely put it all out there in terms of linking things together from the previous game with this one. Yeah, it's super good. So that stuff stands out very well. And yeah, like I had a good time with it. Like I think it was just overall a really polished experience. I think part of the high review scores is just it has just this really high quality bar in so many aspects, from the music to the sound to the just the pixel art aesthetic and all the little animations and flourishes, and yeah, certainly the story is the place where it is the weakest, but I was invested in it by the end, and I do think they did a good job of kind of like pulling me through and getting me to that place. But yeah, it's really about just exploring this space and going to all these different areas. That also has a really fun little fishing mini game where you come across. So the overworld map is interesting. So you'll go into a space and you'll do the whole like puzzle solving, walking around, isometric space. Then you exit to the overworld, and it's a big zoomed out thing, and it's basically like any other classic RPG like Chrono Trigger, where your little characters are walking on the map and you see them walking to the next place. And so there are these spots you can get to that are basically fishing ponds, and so every time you find a fishing pond, you go there and it has like blank spots on the board. It's like 3 fish that you haven't seen yet, and so it's just, I don't think you really get anything for doing it, but every time I went to one, it's a nice little gameplay reprieve from everything else, and you throw your fishing rod out there and you roll in the fish, and it's a good time. So yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit. And yeah, there's a lot of kind of extra stuff there is actually a true ending to this game. I wasn't really bothered to do it because it involved a lot of stuff you had to do afterwards, and it involved finding like these 60 hidden things within the world, and there's lots of stuff you have to do. I would really strongly recommend, though, if you don't do the true ending, going and watching it on YouTube, because if there was any doubt that this game was inspired by Chrono Trigger, the true ending of that game, well and truly, I'm not going to say it like plagiarizes it, but it's like, I mean, you just basically fucking did what happened to Chrono Trigger in the true ending of this game, which I thought was cool. It was like very clearly a reverential callback that they wanted to do, and the way that they combine it, where it kind of combines 2 plot points from Chrono Trigger together in a fun way, I thought it was really cool. So I recommend doing that if you don't want to go through the whole kind of end game stuff to do that, because it's quite a lot of work to kind of unlock that true stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna watch on YouTube, and I found a good video that kind of walked through all the steps of what you had to do and all the story beats leading up to it. And yeah, I think it's a really good true ending to the game. That feels like the right kind of ending for the game. And yeah, it's the very final thing you do in the game as well is super surprising. And I was like, wow, we're doing this. Like it has a whole twist to it. So yeah, I think it is honestly worth going through the kind of that baggy middle to get to some of the back half of this game, because it really does deliver in the end.
Sweet.
So yeah,
need to squeeze it in this year somehow.
It's hard, right? Because it did take me almost 30 hours.
Yeah,
and
so
ideally you want like a kind of 20-hour game like this, right? Like even Chained Echoes was like 40 hours. So like even the indie RPGs are not adhering to Chrono Trigger standards. They're like, yeah, but what if we did a bit more than that? And I'm like, that's great, but like the brilliant thing about Chrono Trigger is how short it is. How you can do all of those side quests, all those character side quests, and still only clock in at about 22 hours, right, maximum.
Right. Yeah.
So I do hope that more of these come out, and it seems like we're in a renaissance of them. Having Chained Echoes and Sea of Stars, basically, like I said, being the Final Fantasy VI and the Chrono Trigger of indie RPGs. Where's the Earthbound is kind of what I'm interested in. I mean, I guess Eastward in some ways, but Eastward's not a turn-based game.
Eastward,
so.
what's the one with the sick music, 12-hour?
Oh, Undertale?
Undertale, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I guess Undertale is that, isn't it, for Earthbound?
It is, but I love Earthbound and didn't jive with Undertale.
Yeah, totally.
But it sounds like I'm really gonna love Sea of Stars, and I did really enjoy Chrono Trigger, so
yeah,
sign me up.
Yeah, Sea of Stars is certified a Bally game. So truly, we are in the year of Bally.
Yeah.
It's happening. F-Zero.
What if the year of Bally goes long like the year of Luigi? Wouldn't that
no.
Like next year just keeps going?
Well, at least in the year of Bally, Nintendo haven't lost like $700 million or whatever it was in the year of Luigi, where they recorded record losses and stuff like that. So you haven't quite cursed the company yet, but yeah. I mean, Sea of Stars has done really well. I assume a lot of our listeners have played it at this point. And yeah, it's like probably a perfect portable game. Again, it's a Game Pass game, so that's where I played it. But I think I would have finished this game a lot sooner had it been on Switch. And from what I've heard, people are saying like on OLED, this is like one of the best looking games on the system.
God,
so there's a lot of temptation there. I think the thing that draws me away from the temptation is it is quite pricey in terms of indie stuff. It's like 25-30 quid. It's quite expensive. But I would say it's probably worth it because the quality is there, and it's a big long game. So if it is one that you're gonna, if you don't have that much time or money to spend on games, I'd say it's probably worth it if you're into this stuff because it will last you a good long while. And if you want to do all the extra stuff, the end game stuff, you can get a good 40-50 hours out of this, I think. So Sea of Stars. Really, really cool. Definitely get round to it if you can. Even if you don't finish it, Bally, I think it's worth you just checking out and seeing how it vibes with you. So
I'll get there. I'm strategizing between now and the end of the year, and I've got some ideas. I think I can pull this off.
All right, we'll see. Because I definitely would like to chat about it in Game of the Year stuff.
Yeah,
I think it's
definitely.
a good candidate for that stuff. So lovely. Well, I think that's going to close us out, Bally. My plan right now is basically to clean stuff up because I've had stuff hanging over me for so long. Basically, your two favorite games are hanging over me with Horizon and Octopath,
yes.
And I'm like 40 hours into both, basically. So I'm about to wrap up Horizon.
I invested over 80 hours in both of those games, and I can't say that for many games. So,
no, exactly. So yeah, I'm going to wrap up Horizon, and then I think I'm going to switch gears back to Octopath for a while and see if I can get a good more dent in that because I am enjoying it a lot still, and it's taking me a while to get through it, but it's been really good. Again, we're going to be coming up soon with some big hotness because Mario Wonder is coming on the 20th, and I have taken that weekend off, Bally, so I will be playing a bunch of Mario Wonder.
But we are going to record ahead of the weekend, so unfortunately, we won't have Mario Wonder coverage next episode.
No.
But we will probably have beaten the game by the
I think we will have done, yes.
Depending
very
on how
likely.
long it is. So next time, I'm hopefully going to play more Wargroove, maybe start Sea of Stars. And then there's a bunch of shorter stuff I'm planning on getting to that I can play and talk about.
Maybe I might do a bit of a Mario Wonder solo segment. That might be a fun thing to do, just so that people have something to get a bit of our thoughts on for next time. So maybe we can add that on to next week's episode, just so people can get a bit of Mario Wonder thoughts in there.
And I'm coming down to London, so we're going to go out for some food and drinks. So
absolutely. It'll be a good time. Looking forward to that. And we'll continue to jam away at our backlogs here and see if we can make any sort of dent in them. It's been going well. It's been going well so far. So
and occasionally, MBZ just messages you like, "Oh yeah, this is my game of the year, and you need to play it." And it's like, "Okay, well, I guess I gotta play this game."
It's not helpful,
right?
but hey, I mean, it led to a good discussion, right? So I'm glad that you got to play it.
It was a fantastic game. Let's see if that happens. When's the next time that's going to happen? Where you're just like, I play this game, you got to play it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very rare that it happens, but
See, the thing is, MBZ is gradually turning into Jeff Gerstmann. Like this has been going on for
what
about
do you mean by
this? 6, 7, 8 years, where MBZ keeps widening his horizons. He keeps playing more and more different games. He gets a lot more fussy and a lot more nitpicky, and he gradually just becomes sour on things he formerly loved. And all of a sudden, freshness is rewarded more and more and more. To the point where when MBZ messages you and he says, This game is fantastic. You need to play it. You're only getting more and more believable, MZ. Like when
Okay, it means more basically.
You're getting more refined, harder to please. So by the time that we're like 80 years old, you're gonna be like, I need, I don't know, Baldur's Gate 3 in my veins every single game. It has to be so fresh. It has to be new. It has to be whatever. So I think we're still on that trajectory. So that's why I knew Cocoon was one to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I as soon as I played it, I'm like, Bally's gonna fucking love this game as well. Like I felt it in my bones. So,
it's definitely surpassed The Gardens Between as my favorite puzzler for sure.
I think
easily above that.
Yeah, I think like honestly, this like Gorogoa is
it's got a lot of Gorogoa energy.
Yes,
Gorogoa presents that world into world thing in a way that I didn't jive with, but you do the world into world thing that Cocoon's doing, it just sat with me so much nicer.
Yeah, for sure. Puzzle games are good, turns out.
Oh, yes.
But we are going to get on out of here, so let's plug some stuff and say bye-bye. Bally, people can go on the internet and find us. They can find me at LordNBZ on Twitter. Where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91. I was really hoping that I was going to get another win in F-Zero 99.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, I can't remember the last time I got a top 10.
Oh, no.
The difficulty has ranked right up. It is.
Damn. Well, I mean, my chances of getting a top 10 are basically dashed at this point then, aren't they?
It's brutal out there.
Have they not added new tracks? Did they do that recently?
Oh, yeah, they've added tracks. They're brutally hard. All the racers seem to be absolute pros now. My rank still keeps going up, which is nice, but I'm struggling like hell to get closer. Like there's a lot more impressive driving going on out there. So yeah, look out. It's rough out there.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're updating that very quickly because like I didn't expect them to suddenly drop even more tracks so soon after it came out.
Yeah, nice to see more tracks. No more cars yet.
No.
I don't know if that will be a thing. Like I said, I think the game's very finely balanced with the cars, so I'd be surprised if there's many more, but we'll see.
But yeah, I'm sure you'll return to that as more stuff gets
added.
I've
been chipping away a little bit. I think I'm maybe played about 15 hours, 14 hours. Like I've done close to 160, 70 races.
Wow.
So.
That's
and seeing as I got one win for 100 races, I guess I'm not due another win yet.
No, you got to do another 50 or so.
I've got about 40 races in the bag to try and get that win. But
good stuff. You can also find the podcast Twitter at TNL Podcast for updates about the show, link to our Discord, link to our YouTube channel, all that good stuff where you can find the show. Usually on this episode, we do emails from listeners, but we didn't do them today. But Bally, people can send their emails in for us to answer. Where can they send them to?
Please email ThisNintendoLife at gmail.com. That's ThisNintendoLife at gmail.com. We should also say there's a channel on our Discord server. Link to the Discord server in the show notes. And there's a channel called Emails. You can post your comment, your email, your question over there as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, go ahead and do that, and I'm sure that next time we will get back to those and start digging through the bucket. Obviously, you can find us on the internet in various places, but if you would like to support the show, you can do so by going to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where you can sign up and get some bonus things from us. I think Patreon's on a weird update thing, Bally. I'm not sure what the consequences are of it for us or anything, but if anything's going wrong with Patreon and feeds and stuff, let us know, because I've been hearing some bad stuff about the changes they're making, basically. So we'll see how that's going. But yes, we would like to thank people who are supporting us still on Patreon, Bally. Who are they?
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier plus patrons. They are Zach S, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, Wicked Gamer UK, Alan, and Turtle. Thank you all for your $10 tier plus support. But thank you to all of our other patrons.
Absolutely.
We really, really, really appreciate the support you give the show, especially as we've got a lot of Nintendo shows coming up, and there's a lot of Nintendo games coming out, most notably for me, Forza Motorsport. Well, there's middling reviews, but I'm still excited to play it. And Spider-Man 2's around the corner, same day as Mario Wonder, so we're both going to jump into that.
Absolutely. I played a Plague Tale Requiem as well, so we're going to talk about that. There's lots of stuff to chat about.
Solar Ash.
Solar Ash, yeah, lots of good stuff. So, look out for those episodes when they drop. But yes, you can also find us in various places across the internet. If you would like to subscribe to the show, you can find us on Stitcher or on Spotify. You can download us in any podcasting app that you find. Just search This Nintendo Life, and you can subscribe and get the episodes downloaded automatically every couple of weeks when they come out. Never have to think about it again. Peace of mind. Lovely stuff. Obviously, you can also review us, and that'd be greatly appreciated. If you're looking for a nice Halloween present for us this October, give us a review on either iTunes or on Spotify. Either way helps us and gets us out to different audiences, more people. So that would be lovely and wonderful, and we would appreciate it greatly. So go ahead if you are so inclined. But yeah, I think that is going to do us, Bally. It's going to wrap us up for this hot October month. I'm expecting some interesting stuff from Mario Wonder. You know, I'm interested to how it reviews and stuff. I'm actually going to be
my expectations are low.
Yeah, I think we'll go in with lowered expectations and prepare to be blown away, right? Which is the best way to approach it.
Right. I guess this is your last chance. Open critic prediction
for
God. Mario Wonder. Let's go. MBZ.
I think it can't be anything less than a 90, and I'm going to go bang on the money with. Yeah, I think I'm going to go money. It's Mario. There's a certain, like, this is the thing. There's a bias in the press, but like if anything has the name Zelda or the name Mario on
there's
it,
a bias.
You're just going to get people giving it a 10 regardless, right?
It's like
just going to
happen. 5%.
It adds, at least adds. If you're Rockstar or if you're Nintendo, you at least get a bonus 5% from the press.
I think Naughty Dog's in there as well. Maybe.
It probably, yeah. But yeah, you definitely get a bit of a bump. So I'm going to say a flat 90. I think it's going to surprise people because it's the freshest Mario's felt in a while, and that's going to make people give it a higher score. What do you think? I'm
going to go 88.
Okay, bit safer.
I think it's going to be very popular. It's going to be great, but, you know, those 90s are harder to crack, and I think it's going to be less revolutionary than people are hoping. But,
yeah. I hope otherwise. I
really hope otherwise.
And I may get a chance to play it slightly early because I am going to EGX next week. So I might be able to catch a bit of Mario Wonder before it comes out. So
there was this interesting question on Kind of Funny that I think we can do very quickly. But they said, if you take Zelda and Mario and you break them into 3D and 2D, what would your ranking be?
Oh, okay.
And let's quickly do this. I'm also going to throw in Metroid because I think we can do that because Kind of Funny don't really play
so
Metroid
3D/2D for all three of these. So six games or six rankings. Okay, my number 1 is 2D Metroid.
Yeah.
My number 2 is 3D Zelda.
Okay.
My number 3 is 3D Mario.
Okay.
Then 2D Zelda.
Yeah.
2D Mario. And where it belongs to the fucking bottom, 3D Metroid. Get fucked, Metroid Prime.
Interesting you put 2D Mario 5th. I thought it might be bottom, but then obviously 3D Metroid is never going to. So I'd go number 1, 3D Zelda.
Yeah, that tracks.
Number 2, 3D Mario.
Yep.
Number 3, 3D Metroid.
Oh.
Number 4, 2D Metroid. Number 5, 2D Zelda. Number 6, 2D Mario. So my point is, 2D Mario is not high up our estimations when it comes to like Zelda's big properties. It's number 5 for you, number 6 for me. So I'm hoping Mario Wonder can make me be like, oh, actually, you know, it's a really great genre. Not genre. We love 2D platformers. It's a really great series. You know, we love a bit of 2D Mario, and I'm just not there.
Yeah, I'm ready to be a believer in Mario Wonder. So yes,
let's do it.
It's called Wonder. It's supposed to make us believers. Drop the what do you call it? The cynicism from our eyes. So let's go. I
want to play as an elephant. Who doesn't want to play as an elephant?
Absolutely. Sounds like a great time. So looking forward to it, and we will be chatting about it, I'm sure, much more. But until then, thank you all so much for listening. We will see you in a couple of weeks' time with some more nonsense. Until then, have a good one. Bye-bye, folks.